Hey, welcome to episode 3 of Off the Books, a casual conversation about how law firms can be better financially. I am Jonathan Fishman. I am the CEO and one of the founders of LeanLaw, and I have my good friend Gary Allen, who he and I, the other co-founder of LeanLaw, aside from our third friend, Fred Willerup. And Gary, why don't you just introduce yourself briefly?
Oh, thanks, Jonathan. It's great to be with you again. I practiced law for almost 40 years in a mid-sized law firm. I practiced in several firms that had real problems financially, and then wound up in one that was very well run. So I want to help share what I learned as part of that history to help your law firm become a better business.
Yeah, that's our mission here at LeanLaw. So, Gary, the theme of today, change is hard. And man, that's the truth. I can tell you, everyone always asks at LeanLaw, who's your biggest competitor? And I always answer, it's inertia and the status quo. And, that's not just modernizing the revenue operations of how they, onboard their clients and track their time and fees and draft, deliver, and collect on their invoices and the derivative reporting that revenue operations that LeanLaw facilitates, but it's also inertia around just facing real problems in their business. And I think the piece that lawyers get distracted in is that they make a lot of money. And so they think
They
everything's healthy.
produce a lot of revenue,
Yeah,
let's say it that way.
they generate a lot of cash. And
Mhm.
and I think that is they don't necessarily run good businesses. And that creates a lot of volatility. And why I think it's important now, and I'm going to keep saying this in every episode, which is we have the macro trend of boomers retiring and a new generation of attorneys coming in that demand more information and better tooling. But they're now going to be working in an AI charged environment where margins are going to get thinner, overhead has to become leaner, and they need to operate a better business. And if they can't change, well, certainly the ones that have established practices can just age out and live their lives, but the rest of the industry and those that are coming, like my daughter who may want to be a lawyer, running a good business as a law firm owner is really critical. So, Gary,
Mhm.
you've had some experience. I mean, even in your own firm and with your 40 years of legal practice, talk a little bit about why change is hard.
Yeah, I mean, change is hard everywhere, as we talked about. I want to throw one other anecdote in there that I heard the CEO of bodybuilding.com say one time. It's like, our biggest competitor is the couch. And I think that's true kind of through all human activities, is that it's easier not to change than to change. So you start with that. And then you have the fact that lawyers universally, they want to focus on practicing law. So anything that's not practicing law and working for their clients is seen as a distraction and something to be avoided. There's also a little bit of regret from they've had bad experiences with change, many of them, that they've tried upgrading software or other things and it hasn't worked well. So now you add more skepticism to the lawyer's natural skepticism. That makes it harder. You've got the problem that we've always done it this way. It's kind of working. So why are we going to change that? You've got partners who are pulled in all kinds of directions at once, and there's always something more urgent than sitting down and working on your business. I mean, you know what that's like, sitting in the CDO seat. And, you know, there's a potential for disruption. If a change, you're kind of changing the wings out as you're going down the runway, and that can create problems for you. And then it's really law firms tend to be like little kingdoms where, everybody's got their own interests, and it's hard to get one person in charge of a change project. So you've got a whole bunch of things that are, rational issues for people as they go through their day-to-day business. And all of them make it more difficult to make valuable changes to your business. So
Yes.
there's a
So
lot to it.
yeah, that was a big vomit of things, wasn't it, Gary? But here's what I see, because in what I do, I've talked to thousands of law firms, and I think it's a few things. I do agree with you that there's this, PTSD of previous moves, and what I want this group to understand is moving to a new system today is radically different than it was even 3 years ago, with the advent of APIs and the way we can pull data from one environment to the other. Second is, when firms come to LeanLaw, in many instances, they already have QuickBooks Online, which is core to our platform. So, when you put your data into an institutionally known leading accounting application like QBO, and then layer on a tool like LeanLaw that just handles that revenue operation, moving from system to system actually is much easier than it used to, because you're not moving your accounting. But I think, to me, the biggest deterrent, I think there's two biggest deterrent. You said it, one, which is status quo. Hey, it's working. Why do we need to change? I mean, I recently had a firm that literally that is moving a building, and there's making a decision. Should we buy a new server? And this is a small firm. This is a business of like 10 or 12 individuals. They probably do $1.5 million in business. They have no integrated IT. Should we buy a new server to host our old 10-year-old billing tool and accounting on-prem, or should we go to the cloud like in 2026? So that was the first question. And then I
Right.
gave them
You remember when we used to take pictures of the server closets in law firms? They're
And
very scary places.
well, in 2016, 2017, when we were launching the company, going to the cloud was a real issue to people.
Right.
But the point I'm talking about is the how irrational they are. I then had a conversation because another firm with the exact same technical footprint got ransomware. So that firm got ransomware. And I said to them, hey, I'm not trying to pressure you. I don't like to use these, but your firm came to mind because you exact same footprint, and they got ransomware. And so that's why they're buying LeanLaw. They had looked at us a year before and status quo and everything's good and we don't want to change. And then all of a sudden they have this major disruption to their business. And they're just like, no, we're going to stay. It's fine. So it's just interesting. The other thing I want to say, and I think this is important, and that's why I'm not moving forward. I want to sit on it. Is the second thing is law firms give too much power, especially small law firms, to one person. So, and it's typically a woman who, and I don't mean to be stereotypical, but typically a back office person. It could be a man. That's the firm I'm working with right now. It's a man, but it's one person, and they're like, oh, we don't want to disrupt Jerry, and Jerry and Jerry does all the timekeeping, and they really know the system, and if they don't like it, then we can't do it. Well,
that sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
Jerry doesn't want to change because Jerry, but that one person is holding back all of this modernization, all of these opportunities to have better insights in their data. And so, and that one person could be a partner, and that one person could be the back office person. But the real question is like, well, why are we giving them that much voice and authority over the whole operations of the firm? And I don't mean to answer it. It goes back to status quo and then running crappy businesses. But you can see me getting animated because it's the thing that drives me nuts, because I can see in the law firm the benefit. I can see the leakage from time tracking. I can see the lack of insights. I can see they're still sending out paper invoices. And yet Jerry wants to still lick and stamp and send an email.
Right. No, I mean, there's 10 to 50% profit improvement available for an average law firm. And so many of them won't jump. That's what I just cannot understand.
Gets me fired up. I just want to shake that managing partner. And I told them, I'm like, I've gotten frustrated and been really direct and like, you're holding your whole business back because of Jerry. And here's all the benefits you can get. And they're just like, Jerry, I can't. Anyways, so this kind of a lead in, it almost spoils my next question, but so when firms do decide to change, who's actually saying yes? I know who's saying no, Jerry. It's, it's not one person. So who's saying who are we working through when change has to happen? Who are the stakeholders and why are they important?
Right. Well, this is a place where change fails so often because you get some people on board, but not everybody on board who matters. And so in a law firm, you've got really three big groups. You've got the partners and especially the managing partner. You have the administrators and the finance leads, and then you've got the timekeepers and associates, and they all have some voice in all of this. And if you just go and say, oh, well, we don't need to worry about the timekeepers, they'll be fine, you're asking for trouble, and there might be an IT person in the firm who could also, there as an administrator, who gives you problems. But you really have to think about all of those stakeholders, and you just can't skip over that step.
Yeah. And what's important is, and you really have to think of it this way. Why are you changing? Right? We want to modernize, we want to create whatever that why is. What are we doing? Well, we're adopting and enhancing our revenue operations. I mean, the law firm has to figure out their own vernacular, but that's what they're doing, right? The how, which is what you're getting at, is, hey, it'll be better for time trackers, it'll be better for back office. But the challenge there, as someone who may want to make change in their law firm, is that if we just talk about workflow enhancement, it kind of becomes a commodity. And
Right.
people like, well, it's pretty good. I can track my time. I'm doing my billing, right?
Well, I really like this feature.
Right.
Yeah, you get all of that. Right.
And so what happens is, if you go back up and saying, hey, you brought me in to modernize how we operate financially, and we have these issues. So what I want to do is modernize or change my accounting system, my back office system, whatever it is. And here's the benefit, not the workflow, but here's the dollars saved or dollars earned or whatever rationale. It's more secure. When we're talking about ransomware, we have better insights. We can do things that we're doing, save time. And then you get down into, and by the way, they have awesome time tracking, or they have really great dashboards. When we start with the way downstream how, like the tooling, it dilutes in my mind why you're doing it and the impact it can have on the full revenue operations, which impacts those four metrics that we talked
Exactly.
about: utilization, realization, collections, and time to money.
Yeah, you have to have that financial impact if there's any, if that's at all why you're doing it.
It's the only way to squash Jerry's voice.
Right.
Like,
yeah, we're going to save $500,000, Jerry. You need to change.
You need to change, Jerry. All right. So I guess I kind of answered the question where we're headed, which is what works and doesn't in that process. And I think it's, I said one, but maybe you can dig a little bit deeper into that, because this gets into really how you think about, making change.
Right. Well, obviously, where you've got so many stakeholders in a firm and, people who need to buy in, you have to be strategic about how you approach it. So, you don't want to try to change every problem in the firm at once. Pick something that has a clear objective and is manageable. So, you could say start small, but it's, you want small impact or small change, big impact if you can get it.
Yeah. And think about what you're changing. So what I was getting at there is, you might, if you're just thinking about what we said in auditing the revenue operations, which we said in a previous episode, we talked about onboarding, or even going back to the earnings perception. Starting small might be, hey, can we take a retainer and make it an evergreen or replenishment retainer? This is one example. And that could be a small single motion that can have a significant impact on revenue operations. Or small could be, hey, we're going to swap out our timekeeping and billing tools and because our accounting tools are fine. We're already on QuickBooks Online, for example.
Right.
What I think what gets complicated is, when we coach clients about change and they're talking about buying LeanLaw, and let's just say they're moving from an on-prem to a cloud and they're adopting a new accounting system and the new revenue operations function or timekeeping and billing function, I say, hey, phase one is just replicating the blocking and tackling of what you do today. Phase two, you start layering in insights and saying, how do we start to improve key metrics? Phase three might be, how do we modernize some of the back office operations, improving how we spend our money with credit cards or how we handle payroll or how we pay people with accounts payable. So you can look at that migration of saying from where we start, which is just displacing something legacy on-prem with cloud, but then a stepping stone to not only improving business performance through data and data analytics, but through operative functions, through SaaS tools around key financial workflows, like, as I said, accounts payable. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of a way. You might be like
Mhm.
really narrow, like, I want to deal with this one lawyer in this family practice and get that person to use retainers more, or you might think more broadly. Sorry, I kind of
No.
drilled down on that, but keep going on the what actually moves the
Yeah.
funds.
So, then you've got to make sure that what you're doing is anchored into things that the stakeholders care about. Right. So, particularly those four metrics that we talked about, if that's something that's really going to impact the bottom line for partners and from the managing partner's perspective, that's going to create some powerful momentum for you. If it's just like, it's going to be easier for, the billing clerk, that's, that's going to get a big shrug and you may stall on your momentum.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're buying software, just so people understand this, one of the most important things is to ask the vendor to help you be the advocate inside the firm. And what I
Right.
mean by that is you get all excited as a buyer and you're like, I want to buy this. Especially if this is challenging, is if you're a subordinate to a managing partner or a partnership group where the partners are like, well, you want it, like, our best interactions from a sales perspective is when they give us data and we then make a presentation by saying, hey, you're investing in LeanLaw. You're not buying LeanLaw. I was just before this meeting, I was working with a client that it's a B2C firm, and they're going to do on an annualized basis about $5 million in payments revenue. So they're doing everything electronic because it's B2C. Well, we started talking about surcharging, and by adopting LeanLaw, there's not only a savings, pretty significant savings just in terms of the fees we charge for credit cards and ACHs relative to other firms. But as we looked at their portfolio, they were surcharging a small amount, and we're asking the question, well, why can we move that surcharging from, it's roughly 20% to 60%, which is industry average. That's $60,000 of cash in their pocket. It takes the per seat price from being X for LeanLaw to being positive $71, meaning by investing in LeanLaw and using our tooling for surcharging, which has all this cool automation to make sure the accounting is set up and the trust accounting is accurate. That takes an investment in LeanLaw and flips it to be plus $71 per user.
Nice. Yeah.
And so that's the different way of reframing it. So that person who's our advocate, we just gave them a presentation to present to the attorneys that's saying, hey, we want to invest in LeanLaw because we think it's $71 per user.
Right. And now somebody's got something to be excited about. They can become an evangelist throughout the firm. Yeah.
And you're not talking about the how, because lawyers don't care. You're talking about the benefit. And as long as they can track time and it works well, they're like, this is cool, right?
Right. Make more money. That's great. Let's do it.
All right. So Gary, let's tie this all up in a bow. What did we focus on? What did we learn today? Other than Jerry's a pain.
You got to watch out for Jerry.
The pack.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, we started with change is hard, but we already knew that. But we came up with some strategies that are helpful to overcome that. And, those include, not trying to do too much at once, finding a champion in the firm, and then really working with all the stakeholders to help them move through the stages of change. We didn't really talk about that, but there are established methodologies like ADKAR that help you to move the psychology of everybody in the firm in a predictable way. So it can be done. And the message is, don't let change stand in the way of what's going to help your bottom line.
Yeah. So I think that the way I would think of that one piece, just to kind of wrap on that, is you've got to remember about 85% of the people in a law firm don't care. As long as it doesn't like cause a lot of chaos and it's not a pain,
Right.
they just don't care. They're fine. And most of them will find new tooling fun because they're bored with the old tooling, right? This is cool. And what we have to be careful is the 10 to 15% don't create the inertia or the status quo. And you're right there. We want to focus. You may be saying my software is great. I just want to focus on one problem. And that goes back to that example of, hey, maybe we take a retainer or an evergreen retainer instead of just billing a client. Or it might be something more holistic, like, hey, I'm sitting on an on-prem tool with crappy old accounting that doesn't have any ability to integrate with anything. I don't have data insights. I don't have automation. I don't have anything. I need to modernize my platform. And those are certainly two different workflows, but all carry the same principles of how change happens. Gary, thank you for today. This has been I think it's our third or fourth episode of Off the Books, a casual conversation between two founders around law firms, business performance. I am Jonathan Fishman, CEO of LeanLaw, and this is my partner, Gary Allen. And Gary, I wish you a really good afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Always a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye.